On 3.0T supercharged files, what is the tune doing differently during boost season conditions? Is it allowing for more fueling, higher boost max? Is it cutting power less frequently during wild throttle? A lot of questions.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Let's just give a quick review
Yeah.
on how the ECU works and how it deals with varying temperature and
Yeah, so
environmental
there's no boost season for an ECU. It's constantly going to be accounting for the air density. It doesn't care necessarily if that air density is at 5,000 feet and 30 below, or at negative 1,000 foot elevation and 100 degrees. It's going to do all of the math to try and determine the actual dense air mass that's getting into the motor. So the it's going to account for the air getting in. Now, the way it does that, it's all just math based, to know what and how much fuel it's going to need for a given amount of air getting in. It knows the limits of the amount of the fuel system and the injection windows and whatnot, so it will pull back if it's getting to the end of the fuel system. So it's a constantly moving target. There's no like switch in there that says, "Hey, it's boost weather, let's do this." It's going to try and account for that and adjust accordingly given all of the conditions, because the air getting into the actual cylinder, it may be 5 degrees outside, but if you've got a bunch of poles and whatnot, the air getting into the cylinder may still be quite warm and not, boost season air as you're putting it. So the ECU has to constantly real time react to all of the conditions coming in, and it's going to adjust all of those parameters accordingly.
Yeah. So as far as the ECU is concerned, there's no normal condition.
Yeah.
The ECU is designed to deal with temperatures and conditions from Death Valley, which is the lowest, hottest point in the North America. It's also probably designed and engineered to deal with the Red Sea Valley, which is the lowest point on Earth, all the way up to the Continental Divide in the U.S., the Alps, Swiss Alps in Europe, from minus 100 below degrees Fahrenheit to 150 degrees Fahrenheit, say in Saudi Arabia or India somewhere. So the ECU has this range or scope that it can work in. And new modern ECUs, there's virtually no condition they can't operate in. Now go back to like the 70s and 80s when I was a kid. In the 80s, it would get so cold where I lived in Minnesota that just cars just wouldn't run. It was too cold, right? The carburetor would just freeze up, and you would literally have to like either have your car in a garage or have a block heater for it to function. That no longer happens, And when it's 80 below in Alaska, you can still start your car.
Yeah, there's physical limits as long as you've got the right oil and all that in there.
Yeah.
It's not like sludged up to the earth. But yes, it is.
Yeah.
The operating parameters are accounted for, and the engine is going to be fueled and managed as best as possible for all of the given conditions.
But if there's any limits to how cold or hot it is, it's not because the ECU can't deal with it. So and then so the difference between the summer in the U.S. and winter in the U.S. it's a very small thing that the ECU just automatically adjusts to.
And you were asking if there's like a higher boost max. It's actually the opposite. So the denser the air will generally lower that boost cap or that boost requirement to make a given amount of torque. These ECUs are ultimately trying to hit a target amount of power for a given condition. So to do that in colder weather, it actually makes less boost to do that. So your overall fuel demand is going to be about the same.
Example of that is if you wanted to eat some sugar, you would eat a lot more cotton candy than you would sugar cubes, because sugar cubes are dense and cotton candy is big and fluffy. So when it's hot out, the air particles are more excited and air is less dense. When it's cold, everything, all the way to absolute zero theoretically, where everything would stop. All the molecules would stop moving.